Most women, when it comes to thinking about giving birth, are fearful of how painful it's going to be and how they're going to cope with that pain. And we've been sort of conditioned to see birth as something that's really like horrendously painful that women have to endure on TV and films. Women are like screaming at the top of their lungs, and it just looks horrendous. So a lot of women during pregnancy, the one thing that they're really, really scared about is how painful it's going to be and how they're going to cope. So this morning I had this hip pain that woke me up at like 5 a.m. And I've had since probably last Christmas, I've had really strange hormonal stuff, perimenopause, the joys of being in the early 40s, lots of changes. And one of them has been hip pain. And as I've looked into it, apparently this is quite a common occurrence when your estrogen levels drop. And this morning it was unbearable. I woke at 5 o'clock and I couldn't lie in bed. It was excruciating. And I got up and I thought I'm going to have to take something. So I took some ibuprofen. And 2.5 later, it still hadn't done anything. It hadn't taken the pain away. And I was lying there thinking, this is worse than giving birth. If someone would have given me an injection at that point or an epidural, like I'm not even exaggerating, I would have taken pretty much anything that was offered to me to get rid of this pain, because it was like really deep in my hip and it was radiating down my leg, across my stomach. It even made me feel nauseous. I felt really sick as well. So I was lying there thinking, oh my goodness, this is worse than childbirth, because during both my labours, although I'm never going to say childbirth is not painful, and my two births were what I would say powerfully intense. I wouldn't really say painful, but I would say they were, yeah, intense, and it was really powerful. But at no point did I want someone to take the pain away with drugs. And that wasn't like I'd planned a drug-free birth for my first. Um, I just didn't need anyone to take that pain away. So I wanted to share this with anyone who needs to hear it, because when we haven't given birth before, our only association with pain is when something's not quite right, and then the pain is a signal to us to tell us that there's something not right here and that we need to address it. It's just part of our survival system, so it's there to protect us. And things like my hip, for example, and obviously if you've ever had any accident, broken your bones, those kind of things, that kind of pain can be so intense. And if that's our only experience of it, then it can be understanding that we're going to liken that to childbirth and just think, yeah, it's going to be horrendous because this little human is coming out of our bodies. So it's just going to be like really horrifically painful. So firstly, childbirth pain has a purpose. It is your uterus working absolutely perfectly normal as it should. The uterus is a set of muscles, and when those muscles are allowed to work, when they're relaxed, when they're flooded with nice fresh oxygen with the blood supply, and the mother is relaxed, then that uterus works a lot more efficiently and it's more comfortable. So the actual pain, the sensation, the contraction is the uterus contracting. That's what the contraction actually is. Now that has a purpose, and the uterus completely transforms in childbirth. It's closed, it's sealed, and it's protecting your baby throughout pregnancy. And during the later stages of pregnancy, in your later weeks, and as your body gets used to, you're prepared to go into labour, the cervix starts to open, and the whole entire uterus will dilate, lift up around the baby's head, and actually then bear down and push the baby out. So that is what the sensation of a contraction is, and it has a purpose. Now, it can be, everyone experiences these contractions differently, but the most common way is for the contractions to build up mildly. So you'll have them quite infrequently, and they'll be quite mild. You go about your day. maybe go for walks, things like that, and you can just manage them. They're not a big deal. And then what will happen is there's a peak, so they rise in intensity, they become more frequent. The baby is born, and then they subside. Now, each contraction also builds mildly, so you will feel it start to come on as the uterus begins to contract. It will peak in intensity to a point where it's most intense, and then it will wear off, and then you have a respite period in between. And it's really important to relax as much as you can during that respite, so that you give your body a chance to recover. Your uterus has just undergone a huge amount of work, and it's really nice to allow it to have a rest afterwards. So what happens is, as your body, so you're gradually working your way through labour, the contractions are quite mild, they start to begin to build in intensity when you're in like established labour and in the pushing stages of labour, and then they're really powerful in those pushing stages because they're actually pushing your baby out, and then they subside. And what happens as you're working your way across through into that intense period is your body is matching the intensity of the contractions with natural painkillers called beta endorphins. And so as your contractions increase, so too does this natural pain relief. And they're said to be like 100 times more powerful than morphine. So it changes the way your brain perceives pain. So it blocks your brain's perception of pain, which is why women can cope with labour pain. Because like my pain this morning, it was an instant. I woke up and it was like boom, pain, and it didn't go away. There was no break. I couldn't relax. It was just constantly there for like 2.5 hours, which is why I said it's worse than childbirth, because in childbirth you have these lovely little rest periods in between, and then you can prepare, get yourself, ready again to meet the next one. So these natural endorphins, they increase over time, and they match the strength of the contraction, the intensity of the contraction. So that is why when birth is allowed to unfold naturally without any drugs sort of trying to speed things up or slow things down, whatever the case may be, then your endorphins will be your biggest pain relief, and help you cope with the rise of the intensity. Now, one other thing when you're allowed to move freely in birth and you're just following your instincts, moving around, this also can really help manage pain, because women will find their own rhythm. Lots of women will just completely shut out the outside world and find their own rhythm. So it could be swaying, it could be leaning on their partners over birthing balls, it could be just focusing on their breath, or it could be somebody massaging them, whatever is just unique to them, they will find a way, using usually their movement and their breath in some kind of rhythm, like their own little ritual, just to get themselves through each contraction. And movement is vital. If contractions are really abnormally painful, like sharp pains, rather than this like wave coming in and wearing off, if there's any real intense pain in one side, in one part of the pelvis, in the back, that can be down to the baby's position. So movement and using gravity and just listening, keep moving and finding a position until you feel comfortable, will allow the baby just to make a last little adjustment that they need. And perhaps they're like putting pressure on one part of the pelvis, or they're just slightly in a not so good position for birth. So that signal to you is that, keep moving, keep changing position, use gravity, try and get that baby into a better position so they can descend through the pelvis. So I just wanted to share this with you because it's, if you haven't given birth before, it can be hard to actually believe that you can cope with labour pain without any drugs, just by using your movement, using your breathing, listening to what your body needs, finding a comfortable position, using the support around you of your loved ones, and just trusting that everything is working perfectly. Sorry, you can probably hear my children in the other room. Oh, so I will be dosing myself up with ibuprofen today. But yes, it just got me thinking because during both my births, I didn't take anything. So it was just thought provoking for me to think, you know, how we perceive pain and our experience of pain and how that can really make you scared during pregnancy of how you're going to cope. But you can, because your body was made for this. Every part of the birth process is designed for women to give birth, and yeah, you just trust that. Just trust that you'll have the strength. Trust that you'll find those ways to help support you through to cope, and to ride each contraction out one at a time.